Hey, Shmulik.
Hi, was machst du?
Baruch Hashem. That was for you. Let's enjoy your meal.
Good morning, Chavra. Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning, good morning. All right. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 prakim Rambam, Ma'acholois, Asurais, prakim Hey, Vav, and Zion, beginning with Perikei. Perikei teaches us the din of Eber Menachai that will shed light. And we learned yesterday when you cut a piece of flesh off its treifa, we said, that was because there was no bones in it, as we'll see in a moment. And we're going to also learn the din of the Ben Pekua, when you shech the animal and a female animal, and in there's an animal that's developing, it's considered part of the mother, just like shchitas matter the mother, shchitas matter the child, with many pratim, Yisroel Rabbanan v'chulei. Perek K has 15 halachas, starting with halacha Aleph, says the Rambam. Mipi hashmuah lamdu. We have by oral tradition, right? Torah shebal peh. That when it says in Parshas Re'eh, lo yisoichal hanefesh im habasa, don't partake of the soul together with the meat. What does that refer to? Lesoid ever shenachtach menachai. That's to prohibit a limb that was cut off a living animal. Va'al ever menachai, indeed, nemar even to noyach, ach basar benafshay damay lo yisoichelu. And beautifully, the Rambam doesn't go into greater details. In other words, there's taka pasuk that answers it to the Ben Noach, and they have another pasuk that answers it to Yidden, as it says in the A. Says the Rambam, the isur ever menachai noyeg bibehema chaya va'oif only batahoidim avaloi batameim. Very similar to what we learned yesterday. That isur nevela and isur treifa. These are all yisurim, based on the general rule that ein isur halal isur. In other words, if the animal to begin with is not permitted, then there's no additional isurim. For a goy, there always is an isur because he is not commanded to keep kosher. But only for the species that are tied, deer, that Hashem tell us, you can eat it with shchita. And if you don't do the shchita, adarabah, you cut and limb off, you ask. Halacha beis. Echad ever sheyesh by basar begin batzomas. This ever isn't only if there are certain conditions, whether an avid is a normal limb, which is comprised of both basar and gidem and atzamas. Kigoyin hayad v'haregel, even the echad aver she'ein bo yetzem. What would be an example? Like the tongue, like the testicles, like the spleen, like the kidneys, like the heart, and the like. They are equally prohibited. Elo she'ha'aver she'ein bo yetzem. If there is no bone in it, bein shechatach kuloi, bein shechatach miksasai. If the limb to begin with doesn't have a bone, guys, this is going to be a extension and a clarification to what we learned yesterday. Perek Daled Halacha Yud. Then yes, Hadeza Asa Mishum Ever Menachai. Don't jump about the treifa from yesterday. However, if the limb is a limb that has a bone, then Eimer Chayev Olav Mishum Ever Menachai Ad Sheyifresh Kibri Yasai. Only if you rip it off the living animal, the way Hashem made that Eber, which means only with the whole thing, with the not only the meat, but also with the sinews and with the bones. But if there is a hand, so it's the limb by nature, that limb has bas, so we get them out. You go ahead and you only cut off a piece of meat from that Eber. That is what we learned yesterday. Then chayev olav, but from another lav, mishum treifa, as we learned. Now you're going to ask, Lamay nafkamina, which, in other words, neither of them are Isur Kodesh. We're going to learn in today's 3rd chapter, Isur Chelam. That's like a whole different type of Isur. Right? There's Kodesh, so there's a Chayiv Chatos. Here are the both Lavim, the Chayiv Malkus. The difference will be that when you give Hasra'ah, you have to tell the person prior, what Lav is that person violating. You have to know these halachas. Halacha Gimel. Like we learned to Shiurim yesterday, then you're Chayiv Malkus. Now, even if you are eating an entire limb, so for example, when we learned about the Isra of eating shiratzim, clearly we learned a beria, you're chayiv if you eat the whole thing. You can't even miss a little feet if it's an ant, but not by Ever Menachai. In other words, even if you eat the whole Haver, only if there's a chazayis, then you're going to be chayiv. Pachos mikazayis, even if the pachos mikazayis is that entire limb, pater. Next halacha, chotach mino Ever kibri yosei. Basar gidim ba'atsamais kazayis ba'acholei loike. Even if the flesh part of it is only a kolshuhu, in other words, since you did not alter it from its natural form, right, then you have to have some basar. We don't need a kazayis of basar. Kazayis in total. First, you cut it off the animal. So let's make it clear, if it's an aver that naturally has basar beginim atzamais, when you cut it off the animal or rip it off the animal, if you only cut the basar off, it's treif. Not talking. You cut off the whole thing. But now that you already detached it, the hifrish habasar menagedim atzamais, you now remove the flesh from it. Now einach loika achi yochel kazai is only of the basar. And now once you altered it from its natural form, means if after you took it off, then you dismembered it, and you ate a kazayas, but only with the basar and the gidim, you're not going to be chayiv. But if you left it the way it is and you ate it, then you'll be chayiv. It's mitzvah. Another thing, also halacha dal, chilkoi le'ever zeh, but acholi ma'at ma'at. You didn't put it all in your mouth at one time. Im yesh v'masha achol kazayas basar chayiv b'maf butter, like what you could, because that's a passion, dismembering it. That's also called dismembering. You didn't put it in your mouth. When you put something in your mouth and you chew it, we'll see soon, that's considered you ate the whole thing the way kibri yosei. Here you took a bite the way we normally take another bite. That's it. You have to have a kazayis min habasar. Lokach kazayis min ha'ever kibri yosei basar v'gidim atzomais, and you put that in your mouth. Afal pisha nachlak befiv bifnim koydem sheyiv le'eno. You chewed it. That's already not considered dismembering it. That which happened in your mouth, it's considered you ate it kibri yosei, and you'll be chayiv since it had in total the kazayis. Get all of these details. Halacha tolosh ever menachai. And when you rip that limb off the animal, that animal actually made the bulk of the animal. When you took the limb off, it made it into a treifa. So the din is you're going to be chayiv. What? Shtayim. Sai ever menachai and sai mishum treifa. And yeah, we learned about this b'kitzur last week. So listen, Chavra, the words. The rule is ein isur halal isur. The exception to the rules is, like when the Rambam said, there are three exceptions. Either if both Yisurim come the basachas, which is the case over here, or if the later Isur, the second Isur, is an Isur koilel, or if it's an Isur ma'asav, as we'll have examples. So even though you ripped it off, we're going to learn in Hilchas Treifas, like you ripped the leg off, but above a certain joint, that made the animal treifa. And a chanami, this limb will be also side this and side that. There's going to be one key. The one key is that if you view the animal while it's alive already as Ever Menachai, if behema le'evarim oimedes, then you can argue it was already usher from the moment the animal was born. But we don't look at an animal that way. That's the Gemara. When an animal is alive, no one eats living animals. So it's the Isur Ever Menachai is not even chal on it. It's a behema, it's not evarim. It only became an Ever Menachai when you made it into an Ever, which is when you ripped it off. If that act also made it into a treifa, since behema lav le'evarim oimedes, it's chal b'basachas. Okay. Hatoilish chaylev menachai, and we're going to learn chaylev, my friends, soon today in Perek Zayin, and you ate it. Loikish time, my guys, don't forget chaylev, like we mentioned today. If there is a aver that has basar gidim ba'atzomais, and you only ripped off the basar from it, that's treifa. Chaylev, to begin with, doesn't have bones. So when you detach something in its entirety, I will learn details. What chalavim? That's called Ever Menachai. Now here, there's another Isser called Chaylev.
Chaylev on its own is called Ever Menachai?
Chaylev on its own is Chaylev and Ever Menachai. It's Beider. You're going to be Chayev, Ever Menachai, or Mishum Chaylev.
I thought the whole point is if it doesn't have a bone, And you have to have the whole unit, so like the whole tongue or something like that. You have the whole chaylev.
No, a kazai is from it. That's what we just learned right now.
So kazai chaylev is called even
100%. When you 1 second, Danny. That's if you took it off the animal when the animal was living. Hello, if you okay. Now 1 second. 1 second. So the word is like this: chaylev shuki was asur from when the animal was created. Chaylev is asur. Aver menachai is also chal on the aver.
Only chal.
It's only chal when you ripped it off. So why is it chal? Because aver menachai is not only on the chaylev. Aver menachai is chal on the whole animal, even though you only ripped off the chaylev. That's called an isur moiser. The isur of aver menachai goes in any part of the animal. You only ripped off the chaylev since it's called the isur moiser. Since this is an isur, that's chal on all of it. It's chal on one or the other. That's the word. Talash chaylev. If the animal was already treifa, so here va'achaloi you're like a shalosh. And by the way, there's a chazal over here that isur treifa is chal on chaylev. There's a special limud in the Gemara. These are the exceptions where isur is chalalis. Now halacha number one. Now guys, don't forget. Okay, let's go. Halacha basar hamadudul babahim. If you remember chulin that we had a few dafim about the basar hamadudul. It means that when the animal was living, naturally, whether another animal attacked it, whether it ran through a thorn bush, there was an animal that was detached, but it was not completely ripped off. It's a limb. I'm sorry, it's a dangling limb. Basar hamadudul. And ve'ever hamadudul ba. Oh, Yaakov, you missed a few important points, but we'll make chazor in a moment. If that limb, this is key, will not naturally heal, even though it only got fully detached after the shchita. So how do you view it? If something gets detached after the shchita, there's no isur at all, correct? So the conclusion was that midoiraisa, it's considered attached, even though it never would have healed. It was physically still attached. Midrabanan, it's considered as if it was already detached prior, and therefore the like an oath. That is, if the animal was geschachten, it's called shchita ein oisa nipple. Remember these words. But if the animal died, it's called misa oisa nipple. Death makes it as if this already was detached. Then royin oisa kilanaf mechayim oigevald midoiraisa. Look at this concept. Remember that it was when you shacht it. Okay, midoiraisa. The shchita was mated. Since it was dangling and it wouldn't have healed, midrabanan, you can't eat it. Death, when the animal dies, it's called misa oisa nipple. We view it as if it was detached prior to the death. And any limb that's detached prior to the animal being dying, that's called even a chai. And you take a chai malchus. Lefikach loiken olam shel chai. Avol b'medvarim amurim that misa oisa nipple. If the animal would not have healed, but avol hayachol lachzer b'lichyois. If it would have healed, it didn't heal. You know why? Because the animal died. Because it didn't heal, because you shechted it. Then in nishchata behema, then mutter completely. And if it died, then it's nevela, but it's not ever menachai. Halacha zayin. Now, shomat ever. What happens if one pulled out an organ? So it's not that it was hanging, dangling. Here, you know, we have certain joints. You pushed out the joint, or you crush the animal, you crush that bone, or dacha, you ground that bone. You're going habeitzim shemiach oisam nitkan hareze einoi asur min ha'torah. Unlike the case of the detached animal, we're speaking about something happened in which that limb still has life in it. The raya of life is whenever an animal has no more life in it, it will start to decompose, even though it's physically attached. So, like the testicles were crushed. He's giving an example. The fact that it's not masriach is a raya that there's some chayus in it. Harei yesh b'mixas hachayim, and the proof is lefikach ein masriach. So says the Rambam, afal pikein osur le'achloi miminok sheno agul kol Yisrael mikoydem, because it looks like ever menachayim. Guys, shamat ever is much less than the dangling limb. A dangling limb is kishmoi keno. Pashat begashmi is most of it is detached. It didn't fall off because there's a piece of piece of hide keeping it connected. Halacha ches. Etzem shenishbar.
Is it not a treifa though? Take a piece of animal. It's not a treifa though?
So that's what I mentioned when you came. So what I learned, Pedigal halacha yud is that if there is an aver, Yaakov, that has a basar etzem vat samois, basar gidim vat samois, and you cut off only the basar from it, that's called treifa. That was the chiddush. But if the limb naturally only is made out of basar, like the tongue, even menachai. Okay.
You'd be saying in general, if something is hanging or crushed or whatever, that doesn't necessarily render the animal a treifa.
That's something else. That's what we learned.
If it's a mortal wound, that would be a.
Okay, another day. 1 second. That was halacha daled. If you ripped off a limb and that limb now the animal is a treifa, the isur evim arachai and the isur treifa, they're chal b'bas achas loikestein. All this is here. Halacha ches. It's a seder of it. Etzem shenishbar. If a bone broke, now what do you need to have? You need to have two ribs. You have to have both the flesh and the hide that is going to still cover the majority of the thickness of the broken bone, if you have that. And you have the hide and the flesh also covering the rib of the circumference of the bone. That means whether you're looking at the bone as the circumference, whether you're looking at the bone in the cut, they are still covered b'roiv, then harei ze muter. However, listen to this, ve'im yatsa ha'etzem lachutz, which can happen. The bone broke and the bone is sticking out, harei ha'ever asur. And now, what do you need to do? And the rest will remain muter. That's a very important halach. This happens a lot. Happens by people. It's a rechta bone, God forbid, and the bone is protruding. That renders that bone will not become muttered from the shechita. You got to cut it off. Nishbar ha'etzem v'haya habasar chayfe es rubai. This is met. Avol haya oisa habasar. That it's like a being covered beroif. But listen to the deficiency in that covering. Either that meat is merusas, okay, that flesh itself is crushed. It's not good flesh because of the wound. Or that flesh that's covering it is decayed.
What does chayfa mean?
Covering. And what pshat decay? Decay means if you would go to a veterinarian, they would look at this flesh, they would scrape off this flesh. Happens to be there, but it's not good flesh. In other words, if you would calculate the entire amount of flesh, it would be roiv, but it's not located in one place. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit other place. Or there was many perforations in the flesh. Again, if you want to measure, you got the roiv, but there's deficiencies in the roiv. There's a crack in the flesh. It's pierced like a ring. The flesh is like a covering it. But the way Hashem made the flesh, let's say, has a thickness of an inch, of a half an inch. That flesh, its thickness was peeled off. So there's only a very thin that membrane or layer left covering, or from the top, milmaila lamato, or the opposite. Or if the flesh decayed, you have some flesh, but there's a deficiency with the basar that's covering the roiv. Says the Rambam, these are all fakers. What's
the issue?
The issue will be is that since we have a rule that once an etzim is protruding outside, it's considered Eber Manachai. So even though it's not protruding because it's covered, but the basar that's covering it has all these deficiencies, we view it as if it's Eber Menachai and only the Rabbanan. And therefore, if a person ate it, it means you did shchita. It's not you have an issue with nevela. You did shchita. You want to know whether the shchita was mated that part of the animal, that bone. No, it's not with Rabbanan, and you're making makanois makas makas. Halacha 9. If a person inserts one's hands inside the animal and the person cuts either the tchoil, the spleen, the kloyos, the kidneys, guys, in our however we're going to call our Gimel Elul gathering, we're going to push and see all this. The Pasha to know, you see these words, you don't know what they are. This Chacham left the pieces of in the animal. Why did he leave it? Because shchita is mat in the animal. So he cut it off. No, let me shecht first. Biblically, even in other words, we said if the bone broke and the basar is covering the roiv, you're good. Oh, cut off the tchoil. I got the whole thing covered by the animal. No, my friend, you went and you cut it off completely. The fact that it's physically in the animal means garbage. In contrast, if a person cuts off, God forbid, a portion of the fetus, now we say or the Eved will be muted. In other words, when the Torah says v'chol habehema, l'rabis es havlad, Chazal say l'rabis es havlad, even if it was dismembered prior to the shechit. Big difference. Ubar, if it's in the animal, you're good. The animal proper, just because you're inside the animal, means nothing. It has to be functioning the way God made the animal and not have someone detached. Another din. All these things happen. That uber shechoitzi yodoy oiragloi, right? It extended a hand or a foot. Nesar oisa eber lo oilam. Here's the key. Bein shechatochi koidem shetishachat imay bein shechatochi acha shetishchat imay. Even though we're going to see in a moment a big difference, sometimes we're going to give that aver that once went out of the womb the status of a treifa. Other times we'll give it the status of an aver menachai, as the Rambam will specify. People say it's this. We'll see. But in any event, once something left the animal from the uber, then shchita will not matter. Now, that's true, even if it moved it back in. What's the story in the Chumash? My parrots and Zorach. These things can happen. Okay. Lahavdol between people and animals, but the concept. And even if this child lived for many years, in our case, treifa. Why? Shekol basar sheyatza chutz lemichitzasai nesar kebasar shepeidesh minachai. Very interesting. What did we learn yesterday here, Yaakov? See, basar shepeidesh minachai. Basar is treifa if it's only from the limb. Even here it was the whole limb. You'll see soon. Sometimes the Rambam is going to write, I think Allah Yudalef, he's going to write Ibn Menachai. It depends what case by case. What's that a fetus belongs in the mom. If you take it out, I want you to know that there is a correlation in the commentators between this din and the din in Kachin called Psul Yoitzer. Something belongs, it's a mamash me'ingen le'ingen. Something belongs in the Hegdish. Right, we learned Kachin. If you just take it out from the Kloyim, it becomes Psul Yoitzer. There is a link between those halachas and these halachas. Another scenario, halacha yud, choitzi mixas or ever, right? Not the whole yodoi, not the whole ragloi, part of a limb, the same limb. Omitzase b'fnim, afilo lo nishad ela meutoi hayotzem, meutoi kama. Then here also that part of the limb hayotzem also, and that part of the limb that remained inside is mutter. The im chatach hayotzem min ha'ever achashech ziroi v'nishchato choitach oisoi sheyatza bilvad v'shar ha'ever mutter. And indeed, in other words, it's gavaldik. Only that part of the limb is kosher, part of the limb is not kosher. That's psul yotzeh. Only that which went out. The im layach ziroi. Now, if the animal did not bring back, if the fetus did not bring it back inside, and b'chatoch v'bachutz. Whether you cut it before shchita, whether you cut it after shchita, makayim hachatach asur. Another detail. In other words, what about the place of the chatach? That place itself, you have to then scrape it off again. Hu hamakim shekeneged ha'avir. Achar sheyachtach hayotzeh chayzer v'chaytach makam hachatach. Halacha yudal. So, by the way, in halacha test, like I mentioned, here the Rambam gave the example that oisor ha'ever asher mishum treifa. Don't worry. Now we're going to have a similar case, but not the same. It's always going to be Yosef. Now we're going to have when that limb will be under the category of Ever Menachai. Halacha Yudal. Kol Ever Uber. Now, I have here Aval in the Chayenu, and again, I think it's a mistake. I think it's Kol, right? What's you Kol Ever? Huh? Yeah, Kol. I have Aval or Kol, whatever the year is. Aval, it's the same thing. Kol Ever Uber Shiyotza. V'chatoch koydem shchita. V'hu b'chutz, that's this case. So here, you extend it. You cut it, not when it went back in. You cut it when it was still protruding before shchita. What's that? That makes sense, Danny, because once it's yotza, it's yotza. Now you cut it like you cut off the limb of the animal. And we're like an olive. Ve'im nechtach achar shchita. Now here's the thing. I want you to know, when the Rambam writes, so there's a big problem with that. It's a contradiction to what we learned in Halacha Tes. One simple resolution is that Rambam and Halacha Yud Aleph is only focusing on Eivim and Achai. I know it's a doichik, but that's how they learn. When the Rambam writes Ein Loike, he only means you're not loike mishum Eivim and Achai. You'll be loike mishum treifa. That's what we learned in Halacha Tes. Then it works. V'afilo meisum koydem shchita. V'im meisum habehema afilu chatachai still ha'oich l'loicha mishum Eivim and Achai. Why? Because misa oisa nipple. That's the word. Consistent to what we learned before. Everything fits. It's a puzzle. Halacha yud beis. Uber shehoitzi eva v'nesero eva. In this case, and v'achar kach loylot. Now, what did the Rambam write until now? Simple. Only cut off that limb. Guys, the milk that comes from an animal is viewed as all of the organs of the animal that's producing the milk. So if such an animal was born, so you already held cut. You're gonna have to cut off that animal before you're gonna eat it, that limb. But it's still living. If that child is a nekeva and it came to the point in life where it's giving milk, it's an interesting word. What's the safek? The milk is coming from the ganze behema. It's not coming only from the udder. You don't say it's bottled, it's how you view it. Now, why is it called misafik? I don't understand why the word misafik. There's a suffix.
Anytime an animal sticks its leg out, it's a female, and then it's born regular. For the rest of its life, that milk is considered milk of a child.
Exactly. Halacha Yud Gimel. Hashoichet behema meuberes.
Isn't that the natural way of an animal being born? Is that first part?
No. This is not when it's being born. This is not in the birthing process. That's the whole part. It's not part of the birthing process.
What is it?
This is it happens. It sticks a limb out.
Oh, wow.
The fact that Hashem made us in a way that you can hold a baby, a mother, and the baby doesn't come out is the Hashem made a dafka to see there's a God. The opening is with gravity, and the baby stays in. Sometimes a limb comes out. Okay, you discover a fetus. Now, guys, let's start the ben pekua. Halt kap. Ben chai ben meis. First of all, like we mentioned, Chazal say it says in the Torah of V'chol behema l'rabbis havlad. Hareze muter b'achila. And not only that, even the placenta is allowed to be eaten. Now, shilya sheyatzas miksasa. If a portion of the placenta was outside the animal when you shechted the mother animal, so like this, then we say, mamish, like the din of psul yoitza, like the aver, and the rest is mutter. Why is the rest mutter? Because it's mutter b'shchita, but if the placenta that was only in part outside the animal's womb, but it's not bound to the child that's also there, you know what we suspect? That there was another vlad. There was another vlad. And the other vlad that's in there had another placenta. And therefore, let's read it inside. Kulasud. Because Shema Shil Yezu Shiyatzas Mitzasa Halachavlat Shahayuba. Now, guys, if there was another vlad that's no longer in the animal, so anything that's not in the mother's womb is not nitar b'shchitas imay. And listen to the concept. If the vlad is not mutter b'shchitas imay, so the placenta of that vlad, even though it was in the mother, none of it is becoming mutter. So the problem isn't only that part of it is out. The problem is that since part of it is out and you don't see a vlad in it, we're chayish that there was another baby. The baby got lost. The baby gets lost. The rule is the whole placenta is not going to become permitted. And either is another baby in there. Yeah, that other baby had another placenta. That other placenta also got lost. The ain't that if you don't find a baby, what do we say? That's a gavaldik halacha. And we've learned this in the Gemara. You can argue anything in the animal is mutter. No, the vlad becomes mutter when it's in the mother's womb. If there was a vlad that was lost prior to the shechita, the placenta will not become mutter. Mamash. Halacha yudalat. Matzah uber chai. Now you shech the mother and you find a living uber. Even if it's fully developed, what's the chiddush? The chiddush is that it can live, which so therefore you would argue when the animal is fully developed, it should not be part of the mother. It should be like an entity for itself. We don't say that. We say that as long as it was in the mother's womb, even if it's a full product, it already has shchita. Midoiraisa, it doesn't need shchita. Because we say, shchitas imoy metahartoi, this is what we call ben pekua. However, there's an isur derabanan, which is that if the animal, the im hifris, al gabakarka, after the shchita, you took out the animal stood on the ground, we consider this animal now, there's a nuchi of midarabanan to shechtit, sarach shchita. If you remember, guys, this is pashit because of marasai. Because imagine you see a living animal walking around, and you're going to kill it and eat it? Okay. Final halacha tezvav. Whether you didn't shech the mother, God forbid, you just ripped the animal open. You're not allowed to do that, but if you did that. Or if you shechted the animal, then the animal is a treifa. What does it mean, an animal treifa? That the shechita is not doing anything. Since it didn't have a shechita that's mater the mother, so that shechita is not mater the child. And that's already midoi raisa. The ain shchita simoy moy elosloi. In other words, you can say the mother had a shchita. So what? Since the shchita is not mater a treifa, so if the shchita was not mater the mother, even for a side reason, that shchita is not mater the child.
Don't say that the blood is a
now if the baby wasn't even fully developed, even though it's still somehow surviving, even though the mother is a treifa. Now it's going to be usher because if the head went out and it went back in, and then you shechted the mother, why? Because we viewed the baby as if it's a yolud. And now biblically you have to have shchita. Okay, gewaldig. Today's second chapter is Perek Vav. Perek Vav, it's mamash, the Seder is phenomenal. Dam, Isur Dam, the Isur Dam, Atkan, everything we learned until now, Taka the Rambam says it's an asay, it's a lava b'mechlal asay, and it's also a lav, and Yechayiv Malkus. All of these Surim, Machalas Asuras, and then we have the lav of Nevela, we have the lav of Treifa, now we have today's first Perek, the lav of Evi Menachai, Yechayiv Malkus. Now we're going to something that's even more chamer. And now we're going to learn about Dam. Dam is not only a lav, Dam is Kodesh, which means that the Shoigig Chatos. And then next chapter will be Chalev, also Isur Kodesh. More Chamer Dike Isur. And therefore, Perek Vav will also tell us about the basics of Malicha. The Rambam has, by the way, like always, the Rambam has some unique dinim. The Rambam is actually quite machmir when it comes to Malicha. But let's jump in. Let's dive in over here. Gaval. Perek Vav has 21 halachas. Halacha al says the Rambam ha'oichel kezayis min adam. Interestingly, when it comes to shiurim, normally by liquids, what's the shear, my friends? A revius. By dam, we give it the shear of a kezayis. B'mezid chayiv kodesh. B'shoigig maybe chatos kavua. And kodesh also means malchus. We already had that. Not only that, if a person gets malchus, that is machaper, and they're not going to get kodesh.
Don't we say that a revius and a kezayis is the same size?
No.
It's not. If you take a revius and if you harden it into a
I don't remember that.
Kezayis.
Could be. Let me word it this way, Danny. The very fact that we use the words kezayis, we don't use the word revius, that means we're not viewing it here as a liquid, which is the paradox, because when it comes, for example, to the 7 machshirim, a machshir for tumantara is liquids. Dam is one of the 7 machshirim. It's considered a mashkin. by mashkin nevius. Anyways, that's how it works. We give the shit of a kazais. Not every dam it carries the kadis. We're going to see, guys, dam that is asun midoiraisa, not kadis. We'll see. What is chayiv kadis? Dam behema, chaye v'oiv bilvad. You have to remember the klalim. Now, what did we learn yesterday? Like nevela and treifas, only by animals that are tohidim, not by dam. Not by dam. By dam, see, by nevela, it's the same type of isur. Ein isur halal isur. Here, the isur of tameya is a lav, and I say not kadis. Isur of dam is not kadis. So here is bein tamei and bein tohidim. I think that's the reason, because yes, it's more chamor. And the Torah says, now, by the way, what about chaya? Here we say chaya b'chal behema. As it says, that's an ayah. And the fact that the Torah says, that's the proof, Shoki, b'chol moishvei means all animals. All animals, but moishvei is tohidim and tameim. However, avol dam dogim, or dam of chagavim, or the dam of shkatzim v'demasim, the dam ha'adam, this level of isur is not there. Now, guys, don't jump. What did we learn? We learned yesterday or over Shabbos that a sheretz basar v'dama yar mitztaref. The Rambam is not saying that dam shkatzim can be consumed. Maybe not. Maybe dam shkatzim only when it's in it. Maybe when it's removed, it's completely mutter. It's not this isur. Very good. Lefikach. Oh, the Rambam is going to go through case by case by case. Yeah, I said good. That dam shkatzim is asur shuki only because of what? Lefikach dam dogim, whatever if you call that blood, or the blood of grasshoppers that are tohoidim. That's important. Dam chagavim tohoidim. Lachatchila you can eat, and even not only eat it when it's in the flesh. Even if you removed it from the flesh, you gathered it in a keli, like those pagans, and you drank it, mutter. Now, dam chagavim v'dogim tameim, you can't say that it's mutter to eat. There's no isur of dam. Also mishum shu tamtzes gufan. Just like we learned yesterday, hayotzim and atamei tamei. Like the milk, kachalev is not chalev, it's cholav. Like the milk of a behemoth tameya. Similarly, the dam shiratzim, there's no isur dam. You're not going to be chayiv kadis. But the dam of shiratzim is just like the flesh of the shiratzim. You're going to be chayiv mishum sheretz. And now we learned punkt by shiratzim. Could be a sheretz. It's included in different types of categories. And for the one nomal that's created in the water with wings, you'll be chayiv 5 malkusim. Same thing for the dam. What about dam ha'adam? Dam ha'adam, we learn adam is asr midoiraisa. Lava b'mechlal asay. Zois achaya asher tochel. Dam ha'adam asr midivrei soifim. Only midrabanan. And only when, if they're separated from the body, and for that you get the classic makas mardus, avol dam hashinayim. That's a good example of what I mean is separated. In your mouth, your gums can bleed. Do I have to spit out? No, I don't. I have blood from my mouth, in my mouth, bein hashinayim, boiloi ve'ein animna, on no level. There's no isur at all. However, if you bite a piece of bread and some of the blood in your mouth is on the bread, now you want to bite again. So you have to kratz off. You have to remove that blood. You don't have to make azanikud. Remove that blood and upedish. All of that is, once you chat, if it's also the rice and kares, or you give it's also midrabanan. So, remove that blood and you can eat the bread. Halachigim. Now, another detail about dam when there's kares. It's called dam hanefesh. Dam hanefesh is the blood, not even all of it, but the blood that is gushing out when you shech. And this has nothing to do with halachic shchita. Nechira is the word that's used how we used to kill animals before Matan Torah. Nechira means you rip the neck open. When you mortally wound the animal and blood is gushing out, whether it was shchita or nechira, piercing, it's equally asur. Oy hatazas farosh, if a person cut off the head of the animal. Kol's manch yesh by adam dumis, as long as it's not called lecha. Lecha is other juices in the body. If it's red, and ba'al hadam hakonus b'toy chalev, blood that's always in the heart, that's called dam hanefesh. Or ba'al hadam hakaze, people used to let blood only while the blood is flowing forcefully. There's a kilua. Abel, however, in contrast, when they used to bloodlet, so in the beginning there was only a little trickle. prior to the forceful flowing. Similarly, the blood that's flowing when someone will bloodlet at the end of the procedure, right, when the blood is already slowing down, for that, a chayavin olav, and chayavin olav, my friends, don't jump, chayav chatos, it's a lav doiraisa, you're not chay, it's not called dam hanefesh, that's what the Rambam means. What's dam yivarim? Again, we'll see in the next halacha. That's also means sadlav. The blood that's in the limbs. Shadam hakiluach. That's the dam shanefesh yoytzaboy. Now let's go. Halacha dal. Very good. Not chayv kodesh. Dam hatamsis. What's dam hatamsis? Guys, that's blood that's flowing out of the animal, but the nefesh does not leave the animal when that blood flows out. Any blood that's flowing from the body, that the nefesh is not yoitzer, and the blood that's in the limbs of the animal, for example, the blood that's in the spleen, the blood that's in the kidneys, the blood that's in the testicles, the blood that's gathered in the heart, not the blood in the heart in halacha gimel that is always there that we mentioned. When you shech the animal, there's like a quick movement of blood, that extra blood that gathers in there, b'shas shchita, and blood that's found in the kaved. All of these bloods are not on the level that you chayiv kodesh. Aval, here's the key. Yes, we're being chayiv malchus. For what? For not eating blood. When you read the Chumash, how many times it looks like so many times. Some of them, because there's different types of damim. That is where the Torah says ki nefesh habasar badami. For that, in chayiv kodesh el adam shanefesh yoytze boy halacha hey. Hashalil, a fetus that's found in the mother's womb. So now we're hemshach to the previous pedic. So you should know its damoy is just like the dam of a baby that was born. Damoy also. Lefikach hadam hanimsa konus. In contrast, guys, next pedic, you know that the isu chelev doesn't exist if you removed it from the baby in the mother's womb. Sometimes we only give the unique labels after the animal was born. We'll learn some chelev, not by dam. Dam is us. Chayav and all of kares. Avol shar damai of the fetus is like a damai vada by the mother. When it comes to damim, doesn't make a difference by the fact that this creature is still in the mother. Halacha vav halev. Whether you desire to tzali it, to roast it, whether you're going to cook it prior to doing so. Says, first you have to rip the heart open to have the blood flow out, and only then you begin to salt it. Okay, the upside of the heart, as we'll see in a moment, is that the muscle of the heart is so smooth that it's not going to be boilei adam if you didn't do so prior. Therefore, the imbish halev, if you cook the heart and you did not rip it open, so sometimes in other limbs you're going to have a big problem. Not over here. And then you can rip it open after you cooked it, and it will be permitted. In other words, we say that the basar halev chalak, the eino b'lei adam. But if imlay karo, however, ein chayav and all of kares, why won't you be chayav kares? Because, like we said, it's not dam. The dam that will be in there is not the dam. I think you're not going to be eitz dam inside the heart because there's not a kazayis. Because the Rambam is speaking about a heart that doesn't have a kazayis. Here you go. Because the dam in the heart is not extra blood. It's not dam ivarim. Dam in the heart is taka dam shanefesh yoytze, and you'll be chayiv kodesh. Halacha zayin. Hakavit. Liver. Here we go. Liver is like one shtickle blood. If you cut open the liver and you put it inside vinegar, the Rambam is going to say, we'll see that vinegar and boiling hot water have the koyach of making sure that the blood stays where it is. And when blood is in its natural place and it's not dam hanefesh, mutter completely. Dam hanefesh yotzei chayv kodesh. Dam haivarim is asur if it left the eivin. So we'll see. So let's start now with these dinim. So if you take the kavod and you throw it into chaymitz, or you put it into mayim roischem, it's not for a very long time. Very long time makes it worse. It becomes whitened. That is shot that everything like got stuck where it is. The Kvada Hagi Yisrael, that what? Lahavava al ha'ur, to singe liver on the fire, and only then to cook it. Whether you're cooking it by itself, whether you're cooking it with other meats, no, that's a chumrah that we took upon ourselves, because as we will see, that when you put something over fire, the fire draws out the blood. It's like a malicha. It's better than a malicha. Now, minig pashut, another minig, she'ein mevashlen hamoyach shel roish, that you don't cook it, you don't roast it. First, you will singe it over fire. That like freezes the blood in its place. Tzemach is smiling. He's thinking about the chopped liver Shabbos
The
morning.
idea of the liver roasting it is that it freezes the blood inside it. That's what we're trying to do.
Huh?
No, it takes
No. I think the lahab of it freezes in its place.
Yeah, but when you burn it, you have to. I'm smiling about the passenger in the other window over
He's
there.
smiling that his son Isaac, Mesiris Nefesh, is sitting on an airplane and learning.
But you have to singe it. You have to char it very well, because sometimes they just give it a quick burn and it's red and bloody inside, and it's questionable.
Ahmed Tzemach. Tzemach is the expert, and I'm not.
From experience.
Here we go, guys. It's good to have a commentator from Tzemach over here to know exactly how you got to do it. Halacha ches. And it's not a joke. The emes is you have to know what you're doing. You can't, God forbid, this mamish. It's yisur kares. Halacha ches. Hakovei shebishlo, liver that was cooked, and v'lo yiva ba'al ha'ur. You didn't singe it over the fire. You didn't first throw it into vinegar or in hot boiling water. So you know what we say, my friends? Harei hakadeder kula asura and hakovei v'chol shenis bashaba. Because what happens now is that now that you cooked it, now blood that was not removed left its natural place, and you got a bloody mess over here. What about roasting it? Say correct, Danny. The singeing it on fire is not roasting it. Roasting it is during the roasting, all of the blood flows out. So the question is, when I'm roasting something, should I be chayish that the blood of the liver will trickle down into blood? So first of all, put the liver in the bottom.
That's why you put it on a rack. You're not supposed to do it in a flat pan.
Exactly. So first, even if you're doing it on one spit, you can do it on one spit. I put the liver in the bottom. So the gravity is, there's nothing under the liver other than the fire. But even if you were avarutz lalamayla basar, which means that what? That the blood left the liver, and prior for it going into the fire, it went on the other meat. It's also okay. The rule is dam hazav einon nivlo bebasar. Dam hazav over fire halachically is not going to be absorbed in other flesh. Don't do it. Halacha hatchol. You got to move. Spleen. Did anyone ever eat spleen? Samach did. I never ate spleen. Muter levash leima basar. Why? Because she'ein dam. Ella basar hadoim eladam. Another thing. Hashoiver mafrekes behemo konushnei nafsho. What's the problem with breaking a neck? I'll tell you the problem is that you create what we call in English internal bleeding. And the problem is that blood is going to get absorbed in the meat, and it's not in its natural place. And even if you're chaylatit, and as we'll see in a moment, other than the fear of internal bleeding, eating meat chay is going to be permitted when dam is in its natural place. Once you know the animal had internal bleeding, that eating raw is out of the question. Now, right? Cut open the piece. Now we're starting. Salt it, yafa yafa. We're going to learn in halacha, melicha yafa yafa. The Rambam is going to say what that is. Here you have to do melicha yafa, and then you can cook it, or then you can roast it. That it's mutter. In other words, we don't say, number one, that if there's no dam, maybe the animal was dead. We don't say that no dam, so the dam that should have gone out of the neck went into the ivanim. We don't say that. If you knocked the neck, if you broke the neck, then we say there's internal bleeding.
Is it after the neck or any part of it?
No, the neck.
Low blood pressure. It's not coming out.
That's why low blood pressure. And then in Mistama, there are other limbs. You have to be a maven, not the whole animal. But if you break another bone in that area, we got an issue.
We're not also going to say if there's no blood that the animal was like a nevela, like it was.
That's
so
what I just
old
said.
that-
Chiddush is two things. We don't say that Shema Mason Hayu, and we don't say that it's like the Nishbar Hamafrex. Halacha Yud. Ein basa yotzim dei damei elam kein moilcha yafi yafa. And by the way, Melicha has 2 steps. Melicha is 3 steps. But let's do. You have to salt it yafa yafa, and then you have to thoroughly rinse it off. Okay, guys are up until our generation. Everyone saw this in their homes. Mamish. Now we never saw this unless you went to see it. Before the Malicha. Huh? Let them do Malicha, yeah. Guys, September 30th. Here we go. First you have to wash the meat. You have to rinse off the meat. You know something? If you don't do this first rinsing within, I think, 72 hours, can't do Malicha. So a lot of times these mashgichim, they do shchit in one place. If they do the Malicha in another plant, some mashgichim are paid. They go and then the trucks come with meat and they have to just rinse it off. Now,
they used to stop the trains when they used to ship just to hose them down and keep going.
Tzemach, I love it. It's good. I'm telling you, it's a geschmack over here. It's the whole train. Everyone waited to rinse off the meat.
I think there's one opinion is freeze it, and then that freezes the process.
So Rabbi Danny is saying that there's an opinion that says that freezing it is also good.
Yeah,
Now we can have a machlokes. Absolutely not. Chazan today. Okay, anyways, that's the old Yiddish machlokes. So let's go back.
What do they call it? Basar,
I don't know. Let's go back. Now, what's yafa yafa? So yafa yafa means you put salt. We'll see what type of salt. You know for how long? Kedei hiluch mil. That's I love Chazal. Now, what's kedei hiluch mil? You have 25 opinions. 18 minutes, 24 minutes, whatever hiluch mil is. And then rinse it off thoroughly. Until when the water that's going around the animal is coming off and it's not red. Now look what the Rambam says. The Rambam says that after you do malicha, take that meat and for an instant you throw it into boiling hot water, not lukewarm water. In order for the meat to become whitened, you know what that does? No, the Rambam holds that malicha does not fully remove the blood. That's the Rambam. Now it's not a machlekes and mitzias because even though there is juice, the others hold that's called seed. The Rambam holds no, whatever's there is still blood. The reason why you can eat it is because whatever there, if you do this next step of throwing it immediately in singeing hot water, it's going to freeze the blood in its natural place, even if you know you're going to cook it later. Remember this. That's Rambam. And no more blood will go out. And because of the Rambam.
So whatever you find after is not considered dam be'en? Is that the varter?
That's the vartir, and therefore the Rambam is going to have certain scenarios where there's going to be a problem of dam, as we'll see in a moment. Because this step of throwing it into boiling hot water, as we'll see, if you have a big animal, a bird, and you stuffed it up with other things, when you throw it into the water, the hot water didn't go in there, as we'll see in a moment.
But Lamaisa, we don't boil water. We don't boil.
We don't do it. We don't pass like the Rambam. Right now, I'm telling you, the Rambam is machmir. Let's go back. Halacha Yudal. It has to be on a utensil abada that has perforations because it's going to be sitting in its own blood. You can only salt it with thick salt, kashering salt. You know what's going to happen? That melech will go in it, and it's not going to extract it. Another thing. You have to shake, even though you're rinsing it thoroughly, before you rinse it thoroughly, you got to shake all the salt off because the salt is saturated with blood. If you'll see that red. Is only if you're going to be mavashal the basar. Yes, moileyach. But you see, you don't have the words yafa yafa. You throw salt. And no, you don't need to have the salt on it. Hiluch mil. That's just the definition. And then right away you eat it. What don't you have to do? You don't have to throw it in the boiling hot water. Why? Because since you're eating it chai, then there is dam in there, but the dam is in its natural place. The problem is cooking it, then the cooking it moves everything around. Another than if right away you would throw it into vinegar seals. And not only that, the Rambam holds, dam is not needle in the vinegar. Now, halacha yud gimel, the chometz that you use to seal the meat, if you throw meat in vinegar, it's going to seal all the blood in there, which is fine because then the blood in there, it was never dam hanefesh, it was dam eivarim, and it's still in its natural place. Don't use that vinegar again. And another din, b'chaticha shedima b'toicha chaymetz. If you leave the meat in the chaymetz for a long time, the chaymetz will become red. Then he b'chaymetz asurim. You see it didn't work. No, but it's not that you're done. You still have an eitzah. What's the eitzah? If meat turns red, what's the indication that the meat absorbed the blood? And baklat means not in their membranes, but and their membranes. And similarly, the neck that have in it these large veins. If after shechita you cut them open and then you salted them, kados means yafa, then mutalabashlan. Like the heart, they were filled with blood. Say that you remove the blood. But if you did not cut those veins, what's called the jugular veins, right? In other words, instead of cutting them open, what did you do? That's pshat. You roasted them. But you roasted it in a way where the openings, the gravity is facing down. So the aish that draws the blood out was going with gravity. Or if everything was put on coals. In all of these cases, even though you didn't cut them open, since you did above, then it's mutar. Halacha yudal. Let's go to the head. We don't eat the bread. I think it's called kasha l'shikha. But brain, I don't know. I think there's an Indian. I heard one of the Rabbeim used to eat the brain, and then they told him kasha l'shikha, as if he didn't know. But anyways, the same thing with the problem. The problem with the brain is also is that if it's positioned in a way like there's a keli in there, so the blood cannot go up, or if it was roasted in a furnace. So here also, if it was positioned in a way where the incision was open towards the ground. So then muter, because then we say that all of the blood flowed out. But then you know what? So look, there's the flesh, the cheekbones, flesh, the lips, and then you have the brain, which is inside the skull. Because now we say Shadam is kabetz l'toichai. However, b'shara basar shal atzama is delicious muter. But here also, if the nose is facing downwards, it's good. So some people plug up the nose. The problem is you have to put something to leave the nose open. The nose, you have to put a gemi or a kana in order for it to remain open, in order for the blood to be able to trickle out. Then, but if you didn't keep the nose, the nostrils open, that's not good enough. And then the moyach is also. Don't place a keli. Why would people place a keli? I'll tell you why, guys. Because there's nothing greater than fat, the kosher fat. So people didn't want to lose the fat. Problem is that the fat has blood in it. So he'll give an eitzah. Don't put a keli under the tzli. Only after what's flowing out is not red. Problem is, aber the vulstich the fats. So he gives you an eitzah. You want to capture all the fats. So you're going to roast it. You didn't do malicha yafa yafa. You did a little bit of malicha. You're putting it now on the fire. Put a keli, put salt in it. What's going to happen is that whatever trickles out, we're going to say that the blood in it is going to go under the salt because the salt is going to chop it. And the fats, beteva, will remain above the salt. Gavaldik. And the lekeach hashem shalamayla. The hamayim shalamata shatachas hasham nunes is really not mayim. It's mayim famished midam. That's what you can't have. Beautiful. Halacha tezay. Pas shechatach olav basar tzali mutal achla. It's not that the Rambam holds that there's nothing called sir. Chazal speak about sir. Even though there's going to be reddish after roasting, the Rambam holds after salting, there's still dam in there. Remember, after roasting, there's no more dam. So therefore, even though the bread is right, it's good. Not a dam of a dog. The Rambam says it's mutter. We say here's the problem that hadagim asurim. Why? Because the oifers amortadim you did melicha because shahadag rafa, the flesh of the fish lefiyerech is softer, and it's going to be boileya the dam hayotzim in ha'oif. And we don't say, but you also had salt on the fish. It's not going to work. Some of the dam of this went into that. Imalach dagim basar. Even worse, that those dagim are asur. Now, halacha yud zayin. Ha'oifos shehinicham shleimim. And not only did you leave them shleimim, but umila halalim, you stopped it with basar or beitzim, and now you cook them. So the halacha is, like we mentioned, since the Rambam holds that melicha doesn't fully remove the dam, you have to put it into roischen. Here we're speaking about a scenario that you threw it into roischen dani when it had the basar and the beitzim. And when the halal is, exactly, that's a pshat. When this cavity is filled with the basar, so the mayim roischem cannot go in. That's what happened over here. It's a chatzitza to the roischem.
There's some people today, they only eat these chickens that are called split backs. So they have to.
That's Lubavitch, because we hold that you have to put the salt in there. Very good. We are moilach both sides.
So I guess they can't do a whole chicken.
Here, the problem for the Rambam is much worse. He doesn't expect the malicha to take it all off. He needs them putting it into the mayim roischem for a moment, and you put it in the mayim roischem with it being filled up. There was a filler prior to putting it. That's the case here.
We're talking about somebody.
Huh? No, not solely. Yud Zayin, read. And then ubishlam. That's it, Yaakov. No tzali here.
Then he continues, man.
Wait. Asurais. Why? Because shahadam yoytze letoichem. Now va'af al pi shemalachem yafa yafam. Even if the meat that you put in there is shalakot tzali, but the oif was not solid. The meat is good. The problem is that the blood, prior to putting it into the hot water that freezes the blood, it was not frozen. So now that you're cooking it, it's not that the blood is coming from the basar shebatoichen. The basar shebatoichen is good. The problem is the dam that remained inside the oil. Now, ve'im tzula'an, like you said, if the bird was roasted, then forget that's
even with the stuff filled inside.
Even with the stuff filled inside, because that's the koyach of fire. Here it's the worst of the worst. The basar that you put in there didn't go through a melicha. You know why? Because the fire is going to take everything out. And furthermore, even if the incision is milmaila, that's the koyach of fire. Now, if there's a skull, you got a problem. But not over here. Halacha yudches. B'nei ma'ayim, the intestines. Right? What's it called? It's called kishke. Shemilan al derech zu. They filled it up with basar tzali or with basar shaluk. Oy shemliam bebeitzim. Ushalakom oy koloin harei elu mutarim. She'ein machzikim dam bebenei ma'ayin, to begin with, for you to be afraid that since it was filled in, here we don't need to have that step of throwing it into boiling hot water after the melicha to say, ooh, that step didn't work because it was ungeshtam. Halacha, you test, you gotta move. So what you did was you coated a bird, what's it called today, a schnitzel, right? And you roasted it. So it's coated with flour. So here you didn't do malicha yet. You understand? Here you're doing the fire. So I guess if you coated them with coarse flour, even if the flour becomes reddish, you can eat that tefillah, because since the soilus is gasa, we say misporeres v'yoytza hadam. So the tint of red is from tzir. But in Toloy became a chitim, flour that you made wet even prior to grounding it. You understand? That's going to be a much gooier flour. There we don't say the blood can go through it. So now if the coating remains white like silver, that's good. You see there's mamish no red at all. Then but why? Because we say that color is the dam that got stuck. Now, so then we say im heidimu asurim, im lo heidimu mutarim. What's the chiddush? It's not the same. Im lo heidimu mutarim means even though it's not love and kekesef, then it's going to be mutar. But in the type of flour that came from grains that were made wet prior to grinding it, there it has to be white like silver. silver is not white. Silver, white like silver. Right. Halacha chaf. Sakin, the final two halachas is about the knives. Now we're going to start learning a little bit about blias. It's all based, guys, on the base hashchita. What we learn in the Gemara is considered soinen enough, even though it's ganz hot. If it would be considered halachically even hotter, then there would be a much bigger issue with the shchita knife because it's mamish boileya. Here we'll see it's a problem, but we can be lenient. That will be the end. Sakin sheshachabo. So in Enochanami, the Rambam says, Asur le'echol boiroi seyach, don't use that knife for hot foods. At sheyalabein hasakin. All right, laba means libun. We're going to learn about libun. Libun, avada is a good, but we'll see. You don't need libun on a biblical level. Oy, yashchisenu kol b'mashcheses, or have it re-sharpened. That also is going to remove a little bit of the outer layer, which might have some dam nivla in it. Oy, again, we're only saying this because we paskin beis hashchita tzoynim. That's why you are allowed to stick it into the ground 10 times. And then v'im chatach b'reseyach mutar. Don't use that knife to cut something sharp. For example, a radish. All this is because really there's no blias. Don't do that. But if you only rinsed off the knife, that you always have to do because there's some dam on it. You didn't even rinse it, you just cleaned it, right? You see, even lachatchila can cut a tsunoi. Final halacha. What about the bowl that it was in which the meat was salted? Afilu shua. Now, guys, we're speaking about a klei cheres. That's important. We're speaking about an earthenware utensil. Earthenware utensil, once it absorbs, it never fully expels. The upside here is that it was coated with avar. If a keli was fully avar, it's not going to be a problem. Here it was only coated with avar. Asur lechol b'reseach la'olam shekvar nivra hadam b'char rosel. However, if it would be made of lead, just to know the din, we're going to learn later. Then you know what you would do? Hagala would be enough. Here we don't say hagala is enough. The outer part, because blood is as a stark, and you salted it in it, and yafa was sitting in there for a long time. That cannot be used for anything. That's reseach. Now, if it's clean and you can use it for cold, it's never a problem, as we'll learn more when we learn about the dinim of absorptions. Chevra, the final chapter today, Perek Zayin, also has 21 halachas. Now we are learning Isar Chaylev. What a gavaldik kaseh. Okay, so in other words, today we learned Evim and Achai, Dam, Chaylev, Perek Zayin, halacha Aleph, Oichel, Kazayis, Chaylev, if, God forbid, a person did it the mezid chayv kaves, and therefore, if a person ate it b'shoigig, this is the most, every time Chazal speak about a carbon chat, it's not every time. The example that they always give is eating chaylev, because obviously it was very common. When you bought meat, unlike today, you needed to know how to do nikur, and there are many, as we'll learn soon, there are many parts of the animal that look like chaylev. They're called shumen halachically. They're mamash mutal la'achloi. People got confused. B'shoigig maybe chatas kavur. Ubeferish batoira that she'ena chayv ella al shloishim min behema toira b'vad. Chaylev is only if it comes from what the Torah calls behema, as we learned bakar v'tzoyin. Shenema, the Torah says explicitly, kol chaylev from either a shoy and that family or a kesed and that family, and the A's, right, oxen and shepsalach and gotalach, then loy soy chaylu. Now, does it make a difference? No. Bein she'achal mechaylev shchuta, bein she'achal mechaylev nevelo treifer shalem. Here also, it's a higher level of Isur. We don't say, anyways, it's Asur. Avol sha'ar behema v'chayom. Unlike Dam, you see, you have to remember, everyone goes through different rules. Dam is Asur on everything, not Chaylet. Behema v'chay, bein temeya, bein tehoira. Chalba muteres now, if a person has Chaylet from a behema temeya, we're not saying, God forbid, he's scot-free, he's not scot-free. You know what he ate? He ate a chaya temeya. Verstehst? But the Isur of Chaylet, Kodesh, is only from these three types. Remember, talking to myself. V'chein, nefel shol shloisha mine behema toira. If you have a nefel, a stillborn, remember what we learned last Pedic, that's the contrast. It's the dam in the fetus is dam. No, chaylev, as long as the animal was not born yet, it has a din of its flesh. And now, what happens if you eat a kazayas? Guys, you're gonna get malchus. Don't forget. The Rambam is not saying it's okay. He said you're not chayv kodes. Oh, good. Like but not because you ate chaylev. You're not going to be chayv kodes. Halacha number 2. Halacha base. The din is you're going to be chayiv sai because oichel chaylev, and you're also going to be chayiv malchus for eating nevela or a treifa. What did we learn today? Nachamal ein isur halal isur meisef. Mitoich shen noisef ho isur b'psara shahaya muter. What isur of nevela? When did the animal become nevela? After it died. It's chal on the other parts of the animal, or treifa. It's chal also on the chaylev, noisef al the chaylev, and therefore like a shtayim. Next, halacha gimel. Now, what did we learn? What did we learn today in Perika? Hey, that when you shech the animal, kol habehema, everything inside the mother becomes muttered. You know what happens? Now that we said that it's only called chaylev after it's born, chaylev kipsarei, so now kol chalbei muttered. And that's even if the animal is chai. The fact that the Chachamim said that you have to do a shechita was because of maras ayin if it walked. But the word is that what's in the mother, when you shechted the mother, everything in there is mutter. And therefore, here we say the midrabanan it's also. No, I'm sorry, take it back. If the animal is fully developed, you see different tracks. If you want to know whether you can eat the meat without shechting it, you could. But when this din that the chaylev in the womb is not called chaylev, it's called basar, is only if the animal is not fully developed. The moment it's fully developed, even though mitzad echad doesn't eat shchita, even when it doesn't even eat shchita midrabanan because it never took the steps on the ground. And by the way, that's a machlok. That's shitas Rabbi Yochanan. If you remember, that's Rabbi Yochanan holds like this. Now another din. Now that we established that chaylev is asur, what must you do? Not only the chaylev is mutter, but as we'll learn soon, that's called a manaket. You have to also remove kol achutim, that are forbidden strands of tissue. You also have the kroimois, that's called membranes. They are also like all other animals. So once it has a din of chaylev, come legamre. Even though it was in the mother's womb. Halacha daled. Weiter. A lot of these cases today. And v'chatach mechelev uber shekol leichadash b'hoit siyoi. So what did we just paskin like Rabbi Yochanan that if the animal is fully developed, now it's called chelev. Harei chayev olav keilu chatachim mechelev atzma. Again, we're going full like Rabbi Yochanan because once the animal is fully developed, now it does have the gather of chelev. Shahachadashim hema gormim l'isur chelev. Even though, like we learned in today, the animal nothing to do. Correct.
In one sense, the animals feel like part of the mother, but on the other hand,
it's not. Exactly. Very good. Halacha hey. Now let's go into more detail. Shloisha chalavim hey. 3 types of forbidden fats, and all of them are under the isur of kares. Number 1, now we learn by Yikra, Pashat, become familiar. What the trader calls chelev on the kerev, the fat on the digestive organs. Number 2 is va'al shtei kalois, the fats on both of the kidneys. Another category. Number 3, shalak salam on the flanks. If you would see it, come August 30th, Gimel Elul, you'll push it see them. We got to see this. However, the aliyah, the tail, even though the trader calls chelev regarding the tail in karbonos, not every time when the trader uses the words chelev doesn't mean chelev. Many times the Torah uses the word chelev as the choicest part of the animal. Kol chelev lashem. Choices. Thank you. Moteres ba'achila. And lo nikreis chelev elo le'im korban. In the context of karbonos, kamoi shenikru chalavim. You know what? Koloyos. And the yoseres hakavod. And by the way, this is mamash kosher parts. It's the choicest part. So the Torah calls it chelev. Kamoi she'ato omer chelev haaretz. Chelev haaretz. The best. Fats are great. By the way, people that are into nutrition, now they're into that again. Best thing is to live off not sugar, fat. The more fat, the better. The chelev, or it says, the chelev kiloyos chito. Right, when it says that there's wheat that is as fat as kidneys. We're speaking about wheat. Shu, it means tuvam, the best. Since Hashem says certain parts of the animal should be separated for him, so in the context of kachim, they're called chaylev. Because she'ein sham davar toiv, what's the best part of the animal? The fact that God wants that part. Oh, we call that chaylev. So, but it's not chaylev for the dinim that we're learning right now. Olakach never, but trumas ma'aser. Even trumas ma'aser, we're speaking about the produce. Bahadim chames chel by bimenu. Very good. Halacha of chaylev she'al hemses. So you have different stomachs, or you have the abdomen, or the chaylev that's on the beis hakoisos, one of the four stomachs. Who hachelev, that is all included in the first of the three guys. The three is chelev al kerev, chelev al shtei hakaloyos, and ksol. You're going subcategories. The chelev should be ikore hayereches mibavnim, the fat at the joints of the thighs on the inside. I'm reading in English, if you don't see it, didn't help. Okay, chayav and olav kares, because that's the chelev al ksolim. Now, Yesham Chelev ala Keva, which is Okum Kumaykeshes, it's bent like an arch, and thus is Oichet Asur. However, Chut, Mashur, Kumayeser, but the ligament that extends like a lobe, that's okay. That's why you need to have a menakir. Chutin Shebachelev Asurim, the strands that come from these fats are also forbidden, but you're not going to be chayiv kares. So this at least clarifies more at the end of Allah Gimel. Once the Rambam passes like Rabbi Zajac, you got to move the chelev, you got to move the strands. There are strands that come out of the chelev. Allah said, chelev shabas and for any fat which is completely covered by the meat, das alein is arai, that it's mutter, because the sha'al haksalam asarakosim, al on the flanks, not in the flanks. Chein chelev sha'al haklois nesar. Same thing when it comes to the second category, the fats on the kidneys. What chelev is also only that which is on top of, and not the fats that are within the kidneys. Still, you have to remove the white matter within the kidney, and only then can you eat it. But since really it's not also to begin with, so all of the strands, you don't have to go chasing after the strands. Chasing the strands is called to be machatet. You're looking for the shtrikelach. It's a chumrah, and that's why you don't go overboard. Yesh kamoy shtei psilo shel chelev beikre hamosnaim. There are like two cords of fat in the primary loin area. LL3. Samach l'rosh hayorech, and that's on the top of the thigh. And when the animal is alive, that chelev can be seen on the intestines. But the moment the animal dies, even if it died through shchita, what happens right after death is that the meat yidbak abasim abasim. What happens? That chelev now is completely absorbed in. What did we say now? That chelev that's inside is mutter. That chelev is not inside. It's only inside because the animal is no longer alive. Because you know why? Because it was alive. Now, but habasar makav oisim because of evil, and the lo yira actually got habasar. Other than in the case of the beginning of Ches, then taka not only not kares, mutter. Halacha 9. Was he eating? Okay, halacha 9. Chelev halev, the fat of the heart. The chelev hama'ayin, and the fat of what we call the small intestines. If ehena dakim hamilupafim, that's the small intestines, the fadrate intestines. Kula mutarim. And they are called shumin, which is completely mutter. However, chutz, meirosh, hami'i, hasamuch lekeva, which is the beginning of the b'nei ma'ayin. The beginning only is chelev that's asur, and how does the manaka get rid of it? Only by scraping it off. Shetzarech ligroid hachelev sha'alav, and v'zehu, that's when you learn the words chelev on the dakin. It doesn't mean that throughout the whole small intestines all the fats are asur. Al hadakin means on the top of it. Now, what is al? So we just said it's where the stomach goes into the intestines. There's other opinions that hold that al hadakin is on the other side. She's where the animal relieves itself. So we got to be machmer both sides. The yeshvan agonim sheyomer that the roish hamei hazesh tzarich ligarim. What's the head? The head is not from the stomachs into the intestines, but it's where the body expels it. It's where the excrement goes out. That's what we will call soif hama'ayin. The Rambam is bringing it to it, which is not so common. In other words, chaylev is yisur kares. Since some people understood what is the head, this head or that head, both heads remove the chaylev. Halacha yud. Yesh beguf habehema chutin v'kroimois. There are strands of tissue. There are membranes that they are asur mish. Some of them under the category of chaylev, and some of them under the category of dam. So, lamashal, you give a person hasra to get malchus, you got to know what you're talking about. Not only for malchus, the advantage is you can't eat dam, but you know what? You can salt, and then you'll be able to eat it. And then you don't have to remove it. Why? Because all the blood will flow out. You don't even have to remove it. But that it's also because of chaylev, that's the nafkamina. You got a problem. I don't care how you're preparing it, whether you're roasting it, whether you're salting it. You always have to remove it. So not only about hasra. Some of them is dam. It's resolvable through malicha or through tzliya, and if it's mishum chaylev, then no matter what, you got to remove it. Halacha yud aleph. Now let's go to the strands. Chamisha, if we can get some pictures of that, would be amazing. If not, Chamisha chutin yesh baksalem. There are 5 strands of tissue in the flanks. 3 of them on the right side, 2 of them on the left side. The way Hashem made us, the way I made animals. They split into 2. The 2 on the left split into 3. All of those are chaylev. Next, the strands of tissue from the spleen, the strands of tissue from the kidneys are chaylev. The membrane on the spleen, the membrane above the flanks, the membrane on the kidneys, else is chaylev. The krum sha'al dad hatchoil Chayavin olav kares. However, b'shar kroim, the remaining part of that, the membrane, is taka asur, but you're not going to be chayiv kares. Halacha yud beis. Shtei kroim is yesh l'kol. A kidney has 2 membranes. The top one, chayiv kares. That's the chaylev she'ala kolya. V'atachtoin hareo k'shar kroim is shechutin she'em asurim emam kares. You know what? You begin to see at least the consistency. La'al, the top, is more problematic. Okay, halacha yud gimel. Chutei alev, the strands of tissue of the heart, and the chutei hayat, the chutei ha'oikets, the chutim that come out of the spinal cord, the chutei alech yatachten, the strands that come into that are connected to the lower jaw. Shebetzar aloshen mikano mikano. Chein achutim hadakim that are betoich chaylev hadakim kigoin beis hakovish. That are musubachim zebozeh, they look like spider webs, that they are like interwoven one and the other, and the krum that's on the moyach inside the crane, the krum that's on top of the testicles, all of them are asur. Now the Rambam says none of them because of chaylev, all of them because of blood. Halacha yudaled beitz gedim.
This is all nikor.
All of this is nikor or melicha, gevaldik, b'diyuk. So if they're not 30 days old, here we say that you can cook them without first peeling off the membrane, because all of that will resolve the dam. But if you find these red veins, then biyadua shor adam, and you may not cook it prior to you peeling off the membrane. Or cutting it open and salting it, as we learned above. No. You shecht an animal. If it's less than 30 days, then you're good. And if it's 30 days older, but you don't see the red chutin, this is not the chaylev, this is dam. Halacha tezvav. Halacha interesting. B'chol b'nei ma'ayin. There's a chazaka that animals should not have internal bleeding. You need not be concerned that blood travels through the areas in the body where food travels through. Okay. Halacha tezai. Yerali. All of these strands of tissue, all of these membranes are only asur medivrei soif. Now, even if there's my question, so the Rambam just adds, even if the im taima that there also been a toida bechlal either kol chelev or b'chol dam, nevertheless, ein loiken elamakus mardus. Why? Because they are like chatzi shir, which is taka also been so makas for sure you're not going to get. You're always going to get the rabbinic flagging. The chachamim will always flag you, but it's makas mardus. Halacha Yudzai. Ein molchen chalavim mavalas. Don't salt or wash the fat together with the meat. Right? Not the chelev, and not chalavim mabasa v'lei madichen. Not the salting, not the rinsing. The sakin shechatach b'chalavim lo yachtach b'basar. I want to add something. You can rinse it off. It means without rinsing it off. That's what we learned at the end of the last chapter. Okay. The kalim in which you rinse off the chalavim lo yediach b'basar. Lefikach a tabach, which will probably with the menaker, has to have 3 knives. One that he uses for shchita, one that he uses to cut the meat, and one that he uses to cut. That's the ideal, to cut the fats. Halacha Yudches. The im derech oisem makim sheyodiach hatabach habasar bechanus tzarich lahaskin shnei kelim shalmayim. One in which you rinse the basar, like we just said, cutting and rinsing separate. The echad v'nei chachalav. Halacha Yudches. V'asar letabach lifrois chelev haksalam alabasar kedei lena oisei. You want to show the clients how fat the meat is. So they would put a thin membrane of chelev on top of the basar. Today it will be disgusting, I think. We're semach. But you can't do that because you're putting chelev. Sha'akrum, sha'allah, and I normally, we're not afraid that the chelev will permeate. That chelev, which is dark, if it will be crushed by the butcher, is manipulating it, he's smearing it on top, then it can ooze into the flesh. However, all of this is just chumrah, so therefore, we tell him not to do it. Don't salt it prior to removing all of the membranes. You can remove it after. Okay, I want you to know that the Rambam here is the Mekel, the Rashba, and other Rishonim hold that if those Kuroimim that are also Mishum Chelev, even if it's only Midrabanan, he holds that if you did Melicha with it in it, then Kedei Klipa, can you imagine? Means all of the basar that touched those Kuroimim have to be removed. How much? The Kedei Klipa. And the Rambam is very lenient here. No, chelev. Yes, the Rambam is writing that that if you did it, you can take them out. The Rambam says it's not going to go out. The only time we're afraid that chelev will come out is when the butchers would put a thin membrane of chelev on top. That. Va'afilu gidanosha, guys, tomorrow. The first chapter will be gidanosha. There's a seder. Va'afilu hayvem gidanosha, and you did not remove it prior as you should have. The milo with gidanosha is it's not chelev, but it's eno nisim tam. That's the whole thing. So you can remove it afterwards. Umavash. Final halacha chaf aleph. Today Shlomo Siri thinks we finish on time. Punkt today. Okay, halacha chaf aleph. The tabach shedarkoi lenakri sabas. What happens? You're checking up on the menaker, and after he says, "I did the nikur," you will find a chut or a krum. What did we just learn? That Rambam B'chlal holds it's only asim midrabanan. And we're not saying that he should. That it's not the end of the world. He doesn't lose his job right away. Don't be mezalzel b'yisurim. But if after the guy says I did nikur, you find chelev, so like this. Im hoisa, the size of a barley corn or bigger, that's unacceptable. And there's even levels to that. Then the penalty is get another job. But if it's worse than a barley corn, then you know what you do? That's it. You beat them up and you kick out the zoy. Then I feel even though that there isn't a kazayis in one place, but if you left in the ganze behema kazayis, makin makas madus, and then mavir noisoi, because everyone is relying on the tabach v'chelo. If the society would be that you have to check, then we wouldn't care that much. But even then, you relied on the menaker. Today, by the way, the same thing is with dam. Today people don't salt. So anything that the consumer is relying on the one before him, if he was mizalzel in it, certain communities are good at that. They're very machman at that, and then you fire him. Tomorrow, get anosha till he continues. What's a suffix deraisa? No,